I am super excited to be with you guys today and to reintroduce something that we've explored many, many times together. I come back to it cyclically, which are the yamas and the niyamas. And they're kind of sort of a code of conduct, if you will, to live seen them before because I give people a little deck. But on one side, it has the Sanskrit word, this case, Swadyaya, which is what I always like to start with. And on the flip side, the English meaning, in this case, self-observation. When I actually was first learning these, it comes up in many different places. It describes Swadhyaya as discipline. And I was like, I don't like that. I feel like a lot of us have a negative association with the word discipline. I don't really want to introduce that into our yoga practice, much less life practice. And then later I read self-observation somewhere. I was like, now that's really, that works. Because at the absolute root of our practice, and I think a good beinghood of being a human, is self-observation. That is what allows us to be so connected to our body that we notice very early on when we feel like we're fighting something off and maybe we need extra sleep or get that vitamin D, C, whatever it is you do kind of thing. Maybe you say no to going out that night or whatever. It's what allows us to notice that we're irritated before we take somebody's head off and go, rah, rah, rah. Okay. It's definitely what allows us to observe our body on the mat in such a way that we're much less likely to get injured or to overdo, and we're much more able to like really get into the nuanced of the edge, because we are seeking intensity in yoga, very different from no pain, no gain bull. But we are seeking intensity because it's at that place when we're there with integrity, we can breathe into it. We're not protecting against what we're finding there, which usually means we're overdoing. At that place of the edge where transformation is possible. So maybe it's a tension in our hamstrings that we've had our entire life, but by coming to an edge and breathing and staying present with it in yoga, we might find that tension begins to transform. That was certainly my experience after years of doing athletics in high school, college, etc. Nothing made me less tight through my trapezius muscles, through my hamstrings, through my hips. I was just like, oh. And it's yoga that did. And it was staying present with those moments. We talk about this a lot, getting comfortable with discomfort, right? And being able to soften our mouth in the presence of it, being able to smile, and of course, always, always breathe. So I wanted to return to the yamas and the niyamas, particularly as we're coming into what I feel is a little bit more of an introverted season where maybe we have a little more attention and a little more time maybe to spend at our mat or wherever you do your stretching and other things. So for my self-observation, what I'm noticing, and I'd be curious to have you reflect if this applies to you at all. I have no idea, right? We just know what's true in our own system unless somebody tells you. But I am really fascinated by noticing how when I'm in a situation that does not actually require muscular engagement, how some part of me might be engaged, like preparing to do. What is that about? I mean, I was just standing talking to somebody the other day, thinking about something I needed to do, and my thighs were kind of tight, like just lightly. I wasn't like, right? I was like, God, why am I doing that? This is not useful. How many of you noticed that you're sort of tightening, but then you
trying to go to sleep.
Trying to go to sleep.
Shoulders are neck is engaged.
They're in like perpetual doing, even though you're not in the moment needing them to yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, so at least half of us were saying, yeah, that's a thing. And it might be that some of you have that as well, and you haven't noticed it yet. I'm not assuming you're putting that on you. It's just a very fascinating thing to look at. So I'm going to give you a kind of a fun little story or image to think about. Our dad took us to samurai movies a lot when we were kids. probably way earlier than one should be going to samurai. Harakiri, where the guy, like at age 7, I saw that. But this one, I think this was the Seven Samurai. I can't remember which movie this is, but there's this very wonderful scene where these two samurai are going to meet on the beach at sunrise, and they're there in their beautiful black, pants and the thing, and they've got their sword, and this light is amazing. They're preparing to fight, and both of them are as soft and limp as you can be. Like, you could just watch their bodies. They're not ready, right? They're just, maybe they have the sword up, but they're just like this. They might as well be, daydreaming. And then the sun comes above, just around the horizon, or I think they had to wait till the whole sun, the ball was above the horizon line or something, right? So it's this amazing moment, you're all watching, and then they both begin to move at the speed of lightning. Like, it's just incredible. They go from completely soft and relaxed to complete motion with grace and power. And I've often thought back to that when I notice my own like weird engaged tension. Like, this is not actually helping me. This is not going to allow me to do powerful or good work at any point. I'm just taking on tension, and it's going to make me tight and sore and make it hard to go to sleep. So if you like my samurai image, work with that. But otherwise, have fun exploring your own tension, anything else that you want to observe. And of course, here in our practice, if you ever observe that something I've offered you is creating, again, it might not be pain, it might be low-grade torque or tension in the knee. Change it. Do something different. Explore it. Figure out what that is. Is it your foot angle? Is it that you're going too high and that's making your knees like splay out a little bit, and now you no longer have the supportive in your thigh? What's going on there? And just keep adjusting and playing, making it organic the way animals do when we see them stretch on their, on the floor or on their sleeping place or whatever. Let's come on to our back bodies and take some time to tune into breath. I'm going to invite you to notice the texture of your breath, which may seem like an odd phrase because we usually refer to texture as something that you can touch with your hand or your skin, etc. But I mean it to imply there's can be a smoothness of the breath, and then there can be a kind of staccato-ness or a kind of tightness. And so we're going to just notice what it's like today. Let's begin with 3 sighing breaths. So gathering a long inhale through the nose. Yeah, and even our sighs have a texture. They might be kind of rough or heavy or tension-filled. They might be kind of smooth and creamy. Just notice. Sound great. And when that exploration of sighs is complete, closing the mouth, finding that very, very soft connection of the tip of the tongue at the roof of the mouth that says, I am present, I am here in my practice. The rest of the tongue is soft, non-striving. I'm going to ask you to take a few moments to scan the architecture. Noticing your scalp, your jawbones, temples. You can even, of course, take your hands to explore where we take our touch. We take increased awareness, which will help, of course, in our observation adventure and gathering of information. If you sense a large amount of tension in the jaw, lion stretch anytime throughout our practice can be a marvelous antidote. And so here we are with light connection, tip of the tongue, eyes closed, turned up and in. What do you sense behind the forehead, eyelids? Do you see colors? Do you see darkness? And as you add your soft ujjayi, a little throat contraction, great sounding breath, the texture of the breath will change. If your ujjayi creates like a lot of feeling of pressure or tension in the throat, try to soften it. And of course, at any point, you're always welcome to let it go. You're gonna notice the soft sound of your great sounding breath. You could even close your ears, plug your ears for a few breaths if you'd like to let that breath sweep the surface of your mind clear and clean. One of the more important things we can observe here and in life in general is, are we rushing the breath, or are we floating in the breath, if you will, allowing enough space and time that there's not only the fullness of inhale and exhale, and those last little whispers, but there is a little pause. I think of it as a wave coming up on the shore until it crests and then turns back towards the ocean or lake. If you like that image, please spend the next few breaths enjoying mirroring the imagery with your breath cycle, the inhale wave, the exhale wave. Being curious if your mind wanders away, even during 3 breaths, that actually makes you quite normal. Just notice, bring your attention back. Let's do one more breath cycle. We're going to make a small adjustment physically. I'm going to have you plant your feet flat for a bridge pose. Work your shoulder blades in underneath you towards the spine, whether you have your arms flat or bent at the elbow, whatever you like. And we're going to make a very slow journey, continuing all those other points of attention on the exhale, raising the hips, trying to keep the knees where they are. So imagining perhaps that you're squeezing something between the thighs so that they don't angle out. You guys are good. On the inhale, the slowest descent you possibly can. And we continue, of course, to scan our head, neck, and shoulders, our tongue, inviting no extra tension, no effort there. And if you notice some, you just simply soften and begin again or continue. And notice if mind wanders, bring it back. It can be helpful sometimes to observe, what does your mind go towards? Before you bring it back, what has it moved towards? One of the things that we learn from meditation itself is that it's not very productive to think, don't think about that. It's much more productive to decide what you do want to think about. So taking your attention to that location, that type of thinking. And in this case, the breath, the ujjayi, the movement of fabric against your skin, again, scanning for unnecessary tension. If you're feeling much in the neck, try tilting the chin up and back a little bit. Let's do 2 more rounds. Exhaling, rising, inhaling, descending, glacially slow. And once you've descended, you might want to kick out the legs. I usually have to do that to release the hamstrings from their good work. Then I'll cross right ankle onto left thigh, heels flexed. You know, I give you some of these alignment details because they tend to be good for the body. Never hesitate to kind of check in, like, what happens if I don't do that? If you just leave your ankle floppy versus heel flexed, how does that feel? In general, the heel flexion stabilizes the knee, so it's a safety thing. But I also feel like I get a better stretch in the end and less pressure on my ankle. I'm gonna hug the right knee nice and tight to the chest, scanning my kind of habitually tight shoulders and trying them to be soft and kind of anchored down the back. And sending the knee a little towards the center line. Do I want to hold at an edge and breathe into that? Do I need to pump a little in and out of that edge? Would it feel useful to clasp the foot with your left hand and kind of change the angle of things? Blossoming another really generous breath down into the abdomen and hips. Your own time switching, and any little organic movements along the way. If you want to straighten that right leg and roll out the ankle before planting it on the floor to receive the left ankle as you cross it over. And maybe the heel is flexed or floppy and you get to see what that's like. Let's hug the left knee towards the chest. Is this one different? As you begin to take it a little towards the center line and back and your own pulsing, what do you find? Where is that just right edge where you're like, hello? Like some massage therapist is really getting in there, but you're kind of welcoming it because you sense it's needed. And you bring breath to it. Maybe you're clasping the foot as well to adjust the angle. Maybe you're applying just a little bit more pressure as your body has changed and evolved. One more big breath. And a slow release, once again, loving up that left leg, giving it some movement. Okay, we're gonna come into a different version of bridge in our horse riding stance. So feet are wide near the edges of the mat. And as we raise the hips, we observe the joints and whether they're happy with the foot angle and all of that, as well as wiggling those shoulder blades in towards the spine. Good. Some people like practicing this pose with the arms straight up, like you're holding a loaf of bread between your hands. Again, you don't want to do that unless you've got those shoulder blades kind of in. Otherwise, this is going to create pressure on the spine, right between the shoulder blades, that cervical spine area. And a slow, slow release. I'm going to take my right knee down towards the center line and my right arm up and back behind the head. Applying 3 generous breaths. What do you find? Ideally, the breath evolves our tension, so our body changes and evolves as well. I like to call the breath the change agent. As you're ready, we'll switch. Always following your own breath timing. And coming on back to center with the feet, I'm going to bring the soles of the feet together for our relaxed butterfly. It's just this combination is so wonderful for getting the synovial fluid into our hips, getting them recovered from life and ready for our yoga. So I'm going to raise the hips an inch or two and get really awake in that low glute and deep thigh groin area, an area that tends to be tight but weak. And because there's no, alignment, there's no action here, I'm hoping you can become even more a breath observer, just softening around the experience. Your body might be moving and tilting like a little butterfly wing, or what have you, or maybe you need to come out to come back in. Let's do about 10 more seconds. When you do come out, notice if you were holding tension unnecessarily in head, neck, and shoulders, let the knees come towards the earth. And then we'll straighten those legs out, but maybe keep them wide out in a little bit of a V. That's a nice relaxed position for those IT bands up the side of the leg and hips. Excuse me. And we'll come into abdominal pumping. We're always curious what's in there each day because it is different, right? Take a nice inhale, slow, deep and wide. Exhale, empty the breath, hold out, and begin the pumping by drawing the belly towards the floor and then pressing it towards the sky. I often notice all kinds of effects from belly pumping. By the way, take a deep breath whenever you need to, and then we'll do another round. But I often feel some pretty deep stretching through the sternum, kind of xiphoid process in the diaphragm area, as well as the obvious massage of the digestive organs. That last one is complete. We'll come into release wind pose. So bringing the right knee into the abdomen, left leg extended straight ahead and powering down towards the floor. I notice when I do that, that if I really anchor my left thigh, my left heel actually comes a little off the floor. And I'm curious as I wiggle my right knee a little in and out, and what's there. And today we're going to do kind of a reclined pigeon that's different than what you just did. This is you're going to clasp your foot here if you can. You could also put a strap around it to make your arm longer. Or you can skip this, obviously, if it does not feel good in your body. But I'm going to keep that left thigh anchored, shoulder heads anchored, and either just hanging out here with the hip stretch or joining me in a sit-up, always initiating with breath and the core drawing down, which is what spontaneously makes that upper back want to lift. If this is bothersome for the neck, leave that on the floor. Just doing kind of a compression exhale effort in your abdomen rather than a sit-up itself. Let's do one more, asking of the inhale and exhale. Is there more? Can I empty out any last little drops? And then inhaling, releasing, extend that right leg to the sky, roll the ankles, love them up. And on your next exhale, anchor the low back and slowly descend the leg. You might roll your head side to side, definitely keeping the back anchored, bending the knee if you need to in order to achieve that anchoring. And then a practice melting everything. We can play beautiful mind games with ourselves. And in this one, you may be like, I'm gonna lay here for 20 minutes and you see how heavy you can get. And then we guide the left knee in for release wind pose on the other side. Heels are flexed. Again, I've got my right heels coming off the floor as I invigorate my quadriceps down. Shoulder heads down, elbows in, neck soft. Maybe a soft smile, why not? And then I'm going to clasp the foot with my right hand. And you don't have to bring it up super high. It's just like, whatever gives you a nice little stretch into the hip. And if you'd like, join me in sit-ups. You might raise the right leg a little off the floor, but not much. And letting that exhale be the power that draws the back down and raises your upper back. And inhale and release, raising the leg, rolling, flexing, whatever feels good as you're inhaling. Exhale, root and descend. And if you guys can, remind me after practice to tell you something about birds. That's all. Just remind me to talk about birds, something important. All right, we are going to bring knees to belly again. We're going to spinal rock up to seated. I'm actually going to take my legs out into a straddle. IT bands, it's an area of the body that's actually kind of hard to observe because on their own, they don't really say much. So we kind of have to go in and either stretch them or feel them. I'm having you go into a bit of a straddle, hopefully up on your kind of tall spine. Yes, beautiful, putting a folded blanket up for the butt can really help. And I'm going to massage the IT bands, which can only really be relaxed in this position. If my legs are straight forward or crossing the center line, the IT bands are being pulled. Which is why you don't really want to sit with your legs crossed like for more than a moment or two. And I'm just kind of feeling in almost like I've got a big guitar string across the outside of my leg, and I'm kind of going into the grooves there, and I'm pulling up with my 4 fingers as my thumb kind of stabilizes. You guys finding that? Yeah. And depending on how tight you are, sometimes it can be difficult to get enough kind of oomph with your hands or how strong your hands are, how tight they are, right? So another nice little thing is you can pound on them. Well, I know that doesn't sound very nice, but it feels good to me with your fists. We also know that we can use a roller. I do have one roller at home that's much softer than the other one. And I can roll my IT bands with that. The hard one, I'm like, I just can't do it. And I've heard some PTs and other people say they're not sure that it's useful to use something that hard, that it might just create more inflammation in the tissues. But in general, the IT bands really do benefit from this kind of release. And those of us who think, oh, I'm just tightening my hamstrings, it's almost inevitable that it's both in most people's cases. So I'm just going to bring the feet together then and lean back. I'm just going to give a gentle little butterfly flap. Again, this is nice. It kind of just oils up all those connections where the IT band connects to the knee and up into the hip area. Okay, then we're going to come into a deep little hip stretch squat. Not everyone's going to be able to get there this way or want to, but I'm just going to put my feet flat and I'm going to kind of heave-ho myself forward onto my feet. Some of you will be like, yeah, that does not work for me. Get there however you want, and yours might be up here, and you can just put your elbows up on your thigh here. Either way, it can feel really good to kind of bounce, just sort of raise and settle. Again, really working all these connections in the knees, the hips, the low back. So you're going as deep as it feels good to go and coming up out of it a little bit. So maybe it's up here, and actually, yeah, even those of you who were going deep with me, let's do the next stage up, everybody. Elbow on thighs. So you're kind of a 90 to start, raise the hips higher and release. So this is a little bit like the stretch we get in our rag doll, but we're doing kind of a pulsing. I think of it as WD-40ing all of our tight tissues. And when you do feel inspired, let's take it into a fold, just letting the weight of the torso hang unless your back or legs object mightily. I'm going to ask you to say a deep hello to your tension. I've got my hands on the floor because I've got my knees deeply bent, but even with your knees bent, if it's just too far to the floor or what have you, you might enjoy the support of a block. But I've intentionally got our feet wide because it tends to make this a little more easeful. Make room for your inhales. Again, the breath is the change agent. So we're going to spend probably another half a dozen breaths here. If you're just getting dizzy or you need to kind of come up and get a release through hip flexors and return, please do. Light connection tip of the tongue, head hanging. Yeah, I see people doing some nice swaying of the upper body and even going a little side to side through the hips. And hearing some good ujjayi. Remember to get that core involved, that beautiful abdominal strength towards the spine as you're exhaling. All right, we're gonna actually plant the hands and walk slowly back for our downward facing dog. All the time in the world, intelligent hands, or we were talking before class about the value of being able to do fists if that doesn't work for you. And I'm gonna ask you to come up on the balls of the feet for your inhale, wiggling those hips to the sky, elongating through the shoulder joint as you root through the pelvic thumb. And then exhaling, working the heels towards the floor, knees bent as needed. Mine never gets straight in downward dog, and that's a-okay. Twice more. Big inhale, never cut it short, that's your fuel. Such a joyful thing, a deep inhale. Man, it just lets you know life's all right, you're all right, it's all good. Ah, marvelous. We're gonna come to a little front body stretching in cow pose. So I'm gonna come down onto my knees. If you're ever hungry for upward dog, it's an alternative. Inhaling, cow pose, draw the heart forward, tailbone back. Exhaling, tucking the tailbone. So we will be doing some upward facing dog, and one of the really important details with upward dog, well, there are a couple of them I want to kind of highlight here, is you're pushing the floor away. So here in our upward facing, or our cow pose, excuse me, we're not kind of hanging on the joints. I'm actively pushing away with my arms. And the second is I'm actively drawing the heart forward, keeping my head neutral. I'm not trying to look up. Hope you're loving that cat stretch and adding any little shifts. Rolling out wrists a moment before we return to our downward facing dog and upward facing dog. So in your own time, remember your hands can be wider than the shoulders. They don't have to stay in alignment. Keeping your feet pretty close here is going to be more helpful so that as we inhale and flow forward, it's like you're going to plank and then you let the hips settle. We can really squeeze our inner thighs towards each other as we ignite the thighs towards the sky. Exhaling, belly to spine, downward facing dog. Twice more. And again, if you're not loving this, we'll cow cat on hands or fists instead. Next, soft. What do you observe about this flow? Is there any part of your body that loves it? Any part that's like, oh, this is a little too much? Remember, you could go to knees down and get a lot of our benefit. We're gonna then relax back to child's pose, taking the knees wide, love up those wrists a moment. We're gonna do a little more nerve flossing today. I know I could use it, and I've heard from a couple of you already saying you're pretty tight through the hands, forearms, shoulders. I know a lot of people are doing a lot of garden work right now, trying to get things ready to go to bed, right? So as you're ready, please extend your arms. So it's like in puppies, like we do in puppy stretch, but we've got our hips back in our child's pose. And I'm going to get my tailbone as far back as I can, my hands as far forward as I can. And then I'm going to tent my fingertips so that it's as if I have a tennis ball between my palm and the floor, basically. Yeah, you guys look good. See if you can walk them forward just a little bit more. And then 3 very active breaths. I'm hoping the inhale might just bring your head and chest right up off the floor. Yeah. And on your exhale, you might just relax, love the earth for a moment. Good. We're going to be coming onto our bellies, so whatever way you want to flip and flop on down there, please do. We're going to be doing some good muscular work all across this whole upper back and deltoid and top of the arms. So you're going to be laying flat on your belly on the forehead if you can, and you're going to take your arms out to a T. And we're going to tuck the tailbone towards the earth. We're always trying to think about mounting what we call the pelvic triangle, pubic bone and hip bones, so that it creates a tuck and a beautiful elongation through the low back. First, just reaching your arms up off the floor, reaching out from the heart through the middle fingers. We're going to breathe here for probably a half a dozen breaths. If you would like to extend your spine so you're up off the floor, kind of in your little bit of airplane back, go for it. And it's kind of fun when you're in flight like that because the breath will pulse you. Yeah, I can see you guys kind of dipping and rising in flight. I love it. Let's do one more breath. And And release. You can bring your arms by your head or back by your sides, whatever feels natural. Swadyaya, self-observation. How's it going? I mean, you guys all, you're at the mat frequently. With this little highlight on self-observation, I'm just curious, are you noticing a little bit more? Are you tuning in a little more? I don't know, they're asleep. They've gone into full-on shavasana. You're noticing that you want to rest. Excellent. Well, we're not quite going to rest. We're going to bring our hands behind us in yoga mudra. So still pelvis anchored, retuck that tailbone, intertwine the hands behind the back. Maybe you want to do the non-dominant hand clasp. So when I clasp, my left thumb always goes on top automatically. So non-dominant, I would reclasp until the right one's on top. Rotate those shoulders down and back as I try to extend the arms, fists pressing towards my heels, and then eventually perhaps up off of the butt. And some of you might be inspired to once again extend the spine in a little bit of a cobra back. You might relax your yoga mudra position and then re-engage it. And then once again, when you're complete, relax however feels natural. Remember, sighing breaths can be reintroduced throughout our practice anytime. All right, we are going to come into our beloved
Plank.
forearm plank, yes. 30 points to those in the background. People are like, beloved child's pose? Could be, yes. Otherwise, you're joining me in forearm plank. So forearm plank, one of the things that I do enjoy about it so much, obviously it's good for our body, but it is to me one of the perfect places to practice being powerful and peaceful, much like warrior poses. There's so much engagement that's needed, but also places that we absolutely don't need to do a thing. So as you come in versus either on knees or onto the feet, scanning the parts that are tight and powerful, and even those questioning, are they hyper engaged? Can they kind of soften to just a quiet engagement and hold you quite well? As long as you're using all the right parts of your architecture, they should be able to. If your heels are rotating out at all, and you're not engaging that inner thigh, you will feel weak, you'll have to strive. So check that out. Same thing, thigh bones towards the sky. Noticing the texture of the breath. And when you feel complete, you've enjoyed that edge, but you've not gone past it, we hope that you'll come out and once again practice softening, the giving into the mat. As we were referencing at the beginning of our practice, the ability to engage is important, but the ability to soften is so important, and I think very rare that we have to be purposeful about reintroducing that ability. Remember how floppy babies are? They can just relax. They haven't gotten quite their adult mind in place yet. All right, let's come into one more round and get curious. Figuring we're going to spend maybe half a dozen breaths here. Obviously, you can stay longer. Getting curious and noticing, do I want to create a more nuanced edge where I'm having to work harder to breathe and be peaceful? So one option in forearm plank is bringing one knee towards the tricep. Make sure you're doing this in a very slow experience. I generally bring the knee up towards the tricep and hold through the whole exhale. But check that you're not collapsing or changing anything through the other hip or leg. The other option, of course, is just releasing the foot and reaching behind you. And please notice, are you hyper tucking? I realized just now that I was. Instead of having the body be kind of elongated and neutral, I was kind of up here. When you feel complete with that, come on out. And one more time, yoga mudra. And I like sometimes rolling side to side. So I extend the arms up off the butt and then I rotate to look left as my arms drop right. So on. Lovely. I'm gonna invite us in our quadricep stretch here, but if you prefer standing version, go for it. We'll be coming up for some standing postures in a moment. So make sure once again, pelvis is anchored. I'm gonna bring my right forearm to the front to support me, raising my chest so I can gracefully reach that left ankle. And I'll just release my forehead to my forearm and enjoy the stretch. Making sure the knee is swinging back in towards the straight leg. Deepening breath, getting curious. What can you observe here? Do you notice how the rising breath wave changes the stretch, creates more of an edge? Are you guys finding that? Yes? Oh, good. Good, good. Yeah, and if you need a little more, you can think about pointing behind you with your knee, and that will raise it a little, and that will deepen that curve through the hip flexors and quads. And of course, whenever you're complete, you'll switch to the other side. Nice, slow entry, very intentional, left forearm in front, reaching thoughtfully for the right ankle, swinging the knee back in towards the straight leg if you kind of had to wing it out to get a hold of it. Yeah. An invitation to move into bow pose. If you need to release and kind of re-engage, give yourself a break, go for it. Otherwise, it's the same entry as the quad stretch. You're just grabbing one ankle and then the next, nice and slow, bringing both knees back in towards the center line, inviting the shoulder blades to wing in towards the spine, flare those yoga toes, breathing. Go ahead and press the ankles back into the hands. And you can either kind of breathe and marry it with motion, like inhaling and press ankles into hands, exhaling, release. You can also just hold in the posture and kind of pulse and rock and roll a little. In your own time, releasing, we might come to child's pose or just straight to downward facing dog. Up to you. Wherever you feel, you can take a few resting breaths. Either way, I'm hopeful that that shoulder extension will feel really good after everything we just did. And then we're going to come up to standing and enjoy our nerve flossing. And I say enjoy, I actually don't mean to be facetious. I think a lot of us do enjoy it or like it. It can be a little intense or nervy, which is not exactly a pleasurable sensation, but kind of good because you feel like you're doing something, right? So the first, just most basic one is prayer hands. All of three of the things we're going to do, we want to make sure our shoulders are just sliding down. And if you're able to get your forearms so that they're making one straight line, great. If not, if you don't have that flexibility, your hands have to be higher, fine. And we'll just go side to side, nice and slow. Slow allows us to observe. It also allows the tissues of the body to be responsive. As we do this, we'll observe our breath rising and settling. We'll ask, can I soften the tongue or relax the muscles of the face or neck anymore? You guys look good. No one's trying to make a big movement. Sometimes people are like, I gotta go bigger, and then they rotate their body or whatever. You're looking really nice. Ideally, we do about a dozen to each side. You might be getting close. One little addition you can make, if you're not feeling it a ton or you just want to explore, for example, when I take my hands to the right, I can press with my left middle finger, kind of press to the right, and that can intensify that stretch through that medial nerve. Somebody's facial expression let me know that didn't feel very good. Yeah. Nice. All right, then let's roll it out. Again, you can take your touch places and just say, hey, body, I'm listening. All right, then we're pretending we are a waiter with a tray of drinks. So that's however you would carry that. Fingertips usually kind of pointed back. And we want to keep as much of this flexion in the wrist as we can as we dump the tray out to the side, fingertips point down. We've just dumped our drinks. You guys look great. And then we come back up. And we'll continue this way. Let's do about 10 on this side, 10, 12, something like that. And nice and slow, just so we have time to really feel. And especially if this is new to you, you kind of need to check yourself. A lot of times people they won't straighten the arm, or they'll get their hand floppy and they'll forget to, engage it downwards. How's it feeling? Good? Good, good. As you're ready, we'll relax that and explore the other side. In my observation ongoing of myself, I'm reminded again and again that I underuse my non-dominant side so horribly. And this is just another example. Like, I always do everything with the right hand first. Like, what? So I keep remembering and forgetting. I want to try and just use my nerve flossing exercises as a place to practice, at least starting with my left hand. So check, some of you, your hands are making kind of different angles. See if you can continue to rotate the fingers down. So you have to kind of externally rotate the arm to get that, and that will take you deeper into that nerve line. Yeah, does that feel different? All right. The last one, you have your hand in front, and then it's also a restaurant metaphor. It's like you're bringing your hand behind you to grab a tip that someone's gonna put in your hand behind you. And I'm kind of bringing my fingers together, and I'm making sure that that elbow is getting straight. And as you continue, a little add-on option to intensify would be to rotate those fingers out if you want to. You may not need more intensity. And I can feel this all the way up into the outside of my upper arm, which is great, because I notice this when I'm doing body work on people, how often this is really tight and it's participating in tennis elbow, kind of golf elbow, whatever stuff. It's unnecessary. It's just the tension of those soft tissues above and below the joint really make a difference. And notice if you're tightening your neck at all. And I've shown you guys before that with these, in general, you can do the head movement as well that would be away from the hand. So as you take if you're doing your left hand behind, you would take your ear slowly to the right towards the shoulder. If you feel any pull, like just uncomfortably right to the base of the skull, I would make sure you're underdoing. You don't want to be like cranking on it, because you might just end up with more tension and soreness. But just by doing that, you're elongating that nerve line. So it goes all the way from the hand up into our cranium. And so does the fascia, of course. All right. Roll it out, love it up, notice what's needed. And again, observe. Did this feel useful? If so, like if you felt a lot of nerviness, doing this, I was assigned it twice a day. I don't really get around to that much, but even doing it once a day would be quite wonderful. So as we move into some warrior flow, inviting you to stay soft everywhere you can. So even if you're reaching through your arms, they don't have to be like, think of those samurai on the beach in the morning, right? They're just, not, right? No striving. All right, we're gonna start airplane arm. Palms are rotated forward, I hope with ease. Soft drishti gaze, like. I'm going to ask you to slowly and kind of subtly in your feet. And I hope find the place that feels the most neutral, but also observing along the way how little difference in your position forward and back it takes to make your thighs tighten up. You feel that? Yeah. You go a little bit forward and boom, those front thighs are tightening up. You go a little bit back. Actually, it's both, but in different ways. Anyway, yeah. Non-neutral is what we find. Let's find neutral state of powerful ease. And on your next inhale, slowly sweeping out and up. Exhaling, left knee lifts, standing crane, palms lightly touch. A long inhale, rooting through the foot, all four corners. Exhaling, step back through that left foot into your crescent lunge. You might bend that knee a little bit or keep it straight or whatever feels good. And then please express yourself again, just joyful, easeful, arms wherever you'd like, or maybe you enjoy that movement through space, whether it's slicing or kind of drawing a big hug emoji circle. We're going to breathe here for 3 more breaths, a longer hold than we often do. An opportunity to really notice. I hope your right hip bone is steering back, left hip bone steering forward. You can dip that left knee a little bit. Again, that'll take you into some stretches. Is there more? And I'm referring to the breath. Let's take one more long inhale. Exhaling, warrior two. You can plant that back foot 90 degrees. Make sure you're externally rotating the thighs before opening the arms out from the heart, perhaps platter hands. So what does it feel like if you rotate the palms fully upward and then reach through the middle fingers? And nothing striving or crazy, just that reach. I actually get a stretch all the way into my armpit and upper arm, because I'm tight enough today to warrant that. And about 3 more breaths. Just because we're, quote, holding the pose doesn't mean that we are frozen, right? So any gentle rising and settling you'd like. On your long inhale, extending both legs and just reaching up. Maybe you look down, maybe you look up. Keeping that right leg straight, please. We're going to just slowly hinge forward like we're presenting a little platter in front of us. And I'm going to ask you to hang out here. I'm leaving my left arm intentionally on my body so that I'm not having to tighten up through the neck. I want you to breathe here if you can. Remember, you don't have to be super far forward, but we can pulse it and explore, reaching the platter forward and coming back up. Check your front foot. I see some over and under rotations. You want your foot absolutely in alignment with your leg. Beautiful, nice adjustment. One more long inhale, this time reaching up and back again. And now we'll exhale, bend the knee, we'll go all the way elbow to thigh into our lateral stretch. Before we move that left arm, check and standardize the body so that, again, it's flat between 2 panes of glass, shoulders are down the back. Then we can reach long through that left arm. And just because we're holding the pose doesn't mean it's frozen. I like to kind of bend the arm a little bit and then reach a little more deeply. I'm also using my right waistline to kind of press up into my left. One more long inhale. And then exhaling, rotate your front foot to come into your straddle and fold. And we're going to go side to side. This is one of the better stretches that I know of for, again, working out IT band and inner thigh, all the kind of partnering muscle groups that works in our hub here to hold us together. So you might notice, can I shift my weight once again into neutral in the foot? So neither forward nor back. Does it feel good to, when I go all the way to one side, or does it create any tension or funkiness in the ankle? If you're able to move your feet wider, that will generally feel better. So take advantage of that. And I've got one person observing that it can be really fun to come down into this kind of alternate hip and leg stretch where you kind of drop the hip onto the heel on one side. And sometimes I like to hang out there and reach the arms forward and get a side body stretch. You could also be higher with your elbows on your knees. Maybe your arms don't comfortably hang out at the floor. That's all right too. Breathing. All right, and then we're going to rotate and place our hands at the front of the mat to step back, downward facing dog. Lots of core support. And let's find a resting breath here.
And downward facing dog, and then invitation for spinal pumping, whether that's cow cat, upward dog, downward dog, or full dog series.
Inhaling to plank, checking that we're in our core, we're not swagging, should be able to hop. Exhaling chaturanga, bend those elbows 1 inch and hold, or maybe you want to do the whole slow descent. Anchoring the pelvis to inhale the cobra, or again, taking that to the upward dog with the arms straight. Exhaling, downward facing dog. Nice deep breath, working those heels towards the floor and saying hello to your tension. And you can either walk your hands back to your feet or feet forward. We're going to end up forward, so that's our destination. You can hop. Enjoying your breaths in forward fold, ragdoll. In your own time, we'll find our mountain stance with our jet airplane arms. And you might close the eyes for a moment to scan the body from the feet all the way up through the head, the tongue. And of course, always the breath. And opening the eyes in a soft drishti gaze, soft focus. And slowly sweeping the arms out and up. Enjoy your journey, asking of the inhale, is there more? Exhaling, prayer hands, right knee lifts, standing crane. Yoga toes, soft tongue. Think about bringing your chin back a little towards the base of the skull. Nice long inhalation before exhaling and stepping slowly back. Enjoy the journey. Nice control of core support. Good. Left hip bone steers back, right hip bone forward. You can play with knee dipping, finding your arm alignment or movement. We'll enjoy breathing here in power and peace. Here's some beautiful ujjayi. Lovely to be at the ocean with you all. We're long inhale before transitioning to warrior 2. So sometimes it's helpful to put your hands on your hips and think about that front knee, keeping it stable. You might even take your left hand to your left knee, keeping it stable so that as you plant that back foot, the knee is not shifting to the inside, which is really easy to have happen. It's the most common kind of misalignment that I see in warriors, especially this warrior 2, is that misalignment of the knee. And then check your hips, by the way, because sometimes people too will tend to send their hips a little to the right or a little bit back behind them. We're seeking neutral, somewhere powerful and neutral. Platter hands. Head can be wherever feels great in your body. Letting our breath wave rise and settle us. You guys look good. Nice organic movements. Long inhale, extending both legs and reaching up. And give yourself space to explore, to kind of relax and invigorate that reach. Then we're going to ever so slowly, keeping legs straight, present our platter forward. And part of this stability in this pose is something I already brought attention to, but I'll say again, is making sure that the left hip, that front hip, is swinging in and your knee is aligned with your foot. If your hips are out, this is going to be a lot of stress right here in the outside of the legs and hip. It should, again, feel kind of powerful and neutral. I'm going to just keep my right arm relaxed on my body, and I'm going to pulse and present the platter and come up a bit. So essentially we're playing with some of the basics of triangle pose here, but giving us a chance to not like go into the pose and freeze and survive it. Explore it. When you feel done exploring, let's take a nice alternate stretch up and back, or forward once more now, bending the knee and coming into lateral stretch on this side. I usually use my free hand on my hip bone to kind of invite that body flattening, making sure the hip and shoulder are opening, but also that they're not overly going forward with my head going back or overly behind with my head forward. So it's Finding that sweet spot and then reaching, and maybe relaxing, and reaching, and relaxing. Is there anybody besides me that gets to stretch all the way down to that hip bone? No? Yep, okay, I got one wave, 2 waves, all right. I know, it's hard to know when I'm being rhetorical and when I actually, like, I'm expecting an answer. All right, in your own time, you'll swivel out to your straddle, right? So you'll rotate your left foot, front foot, sideways, and fold, and enjoy. Breathe, maybe you're just gonna hang out in the center and breathe and have your knees bent. Maybe you're gonna play with bending and straightening the knees. Maybe you're gonna bend and straighten by going side to side. Hands might be on the floor. You might have elbows on your thighs, whatever you need. And as you come out, it's your last opportunity for dog series if you want it. You might also, if you're trying to do less with your wrists, just go to downward facing dog and have a few resting breaths, working those heels towards the floor, or maybe ready for child's pose, etc. And we have arrived at a most delicious part of our practice, I think. First of all, just noticing if there's anything your body needs or wants. You know, there are always poses that we don't do that might be your favorite or that you need again. But we're gonna end up on our backs. We're gonna have the block handy. Yes, it's a great time to put back socks or shawl or whatever you might want for your yogic sleep. We often say those final minutes of rest are the most important of the whole practice, that we've just been preparing our bodies and our breath to go into a healing and rest state. And when we're in our yoga nidra, our yogic sleep, is when our body can heal and integrate. So it's powerful stuff. For now, we're going to give our front body one more chance to like reprogram any of its tension habits. It's also great for the low back. So I'm going to start by placing the block underneath the sacral triangle, not in the low back, keeping my knees bent, and just letting my low back try to settle towards the floor as the block kind of presses my pelvis up a little bit. So you should end up with kind of a bowl of your belly versus your belly being extended. And that low back is kind of rounding down towards the floor. I also work my shoulder blades in a little so that, again, cervical spine's not receiving pressure. And tuning into breath. If you observe anything other than receptivity, if you feel the body's kind of going into protection or tension, change it or come out completely. If you'd like to explore the second alignment we can do with the block here, and actually there are 3 of them. The second alignment is that draping of the legs long, and then the body itself is just draped over the block. If you feel a kind of dumping forward and down of the pelvis, that indicates that you need to move the block down. And now the belly is sort of projected towards the sky, and as we breathe, creates a little balloon there, a little loaf of bread. Fantastic. Hopefully you're experiencing some lovely stretch and opening through hip flexors and so on. When you're complete with both of those, you're going to walk the feet back in, and then I'm going to bring the knees one at a time towards my belly. And if you're feeling like a hard edge from the block, you could move it up a little bit. I don't want you to feel a deep hard edge pressing into your sacrum. And then I'm just going to raise the legs in waterfall. So I've got heels flexed. I might also point and flex, just it's a great way to work out any tension. And I'm going to let those feet swing towards the wall behind me and return upright. Just a nice soft swing, noticing. And then some of you might really enjoy letting the legs go apart in straddle. I find it to be a really great stretch for my tight legs and hips because gravity is helping, so it's still gentle, but I'm getting a better stretch and not having to work it so much. When you're complete with that, just support the knees to bend, to come back in and one at a time plant the feet and remove the block. Slow descent. Maybe a last little knees to belly, a little hug, little seat pose, maybe a little spinal twist, or maybe you take it into your full spinal twist, and that's your final expression before coming into your resting position. So you might be in corpse pose, you might be in embryo pose, you might pick child, or even take your legs up the wall and be marvelously restorative. And taking all the time you need to create comfort and ease. I'll be coming around with a shoulder press. If you'd prefer me not to come, let me know. This is really a beautiful time to hone our skills for softening. We were talking about the value of that for preparing for sleep and so on. So I'm going to ask you to take your attention once more deeply inward. Turn the gaze up and in behind that third eye. And from that deep inside vision, invite a deep softening in the body. It's like you're kind of having a little conversation with all the muscles and the bones of the body as you move your awareness gradually down. And your invitation to every part is, hey, let's soften. Let's let gravity take over. With each exhale, the body is becoming heavier, softer. You might even sense that you're spreading and melting outward. There's nothing to know, do, or accomplish. Simply witnessing now the gentle rising and settling of the breath. No effort. Just this moment. This very heavy, soft body. This breath. begin to deepen. Let your awareness of your body gently rise, a sense of the space around you. And as you begin your journey of coming back, if you will, to the room that we share, and that sense of life, the river of life that we're gonna, rejoin outside, just notice how that feels to you. Do you feel joyful anticipation about your day? Do you have anything that feels heavy or that you have aversion to? And the subtle observations really help inform our choices. We can make better choices, more conscious choices when we're able to notice the subtle. And it's subtle, but there's a big difference between feeling like something is a yes and kind of going, well, I could. And sometimes there are things that we just feel like we just gotta do. But I personally find that unless I'm paying good attention, it's very easy for me to kind of agree to a lot of things that are okay. They're a little bit less than a yes. And when I stop to notice, then I'm able to go, maybe that's not the best use of my energy. What would be a yes? What would be joyful? What would be life force giving instead of depleting? So at the very least, I think that line of questioning is a really beautiful place for self-observation as you move throughout the week. If you feel inclined, and I'm always delighted to discuss with you. It's really fun to hear what people observe. Thank you again, everyone, so much for coming to the mat today. Namaste. Om Shanti Shanti. Om. Peace. Peace. Joy. Letting all this autumnal light into your eyes. Enjoy the changing color and have fun with Swadyaya. See you again soon at the mat.